Today, I want to talk about entrepreneurship, or more specifically, having a side hustle. Hi, everybody. My name is Asmi Shah. I help you harness the power of energy to improve your life. I also talk about yoga, sound healing, pranic healing, and entrepreneurship. If these topics are of interest to you, please subscribe to my channel and comment below throughout this video. Let me know what questions you have, what comments you have, things I didn't cover, and that'll help me create more free content. Let's get started. So, my name is Asmi. I currently work at Google and I have got two concurrent side hustles. I've got one side hustle, which is my services business, where I teach yoga, do sound healing, do also one on one healing and some pranic healing. And then I have my product based business called Soultara, where we have guided journals and then energy healing infused aura sprays and bath salts. Today, I'm going to be talking about entrepreneurship and starting a side hustle. So, I've had so many people come up to me and say, Asmi, you've got it figured out. Tell me how you're doing it. Tell me how it's going. How do you not burn out, et cetera, et cetera. And I especially have a lot of Googlers come to me and ask me how I'm doing it. So I want to start with a disclaimer, which is I don't have it all figured out. This is just my experience. And I'm going to share with you what my journey is, how it is that I ended up having these multiple side hustles, what it actually takes to run businesses, how easy or hard it is to actually have sustainable income, and what questions I think you should ask yourself if you want to start a side hustle. So, with that, first things first, I am not doing this full time, right? And I think there's such a big difference in having a side hustle versus being a full time entrepreneur. So, I can't speak to that because that is not my experience. And I can speak to what it's like to actually have a really meaningful and lucrative corporate career, right? Working at Google full time in New York City definitely is a really privileged place to be and a really great job to have. And I'm so grateful to be there. After I graduated business school, I was full on this path of becoming a successful first worker and then like executive. That was my thought. I worked at a couple of startups. And then I came through this interesting inflection point in my life, which is I did yoga teacher training while working in a really toxic environment and not enjoying things. And that yoga teacher training actually led to my job at Google, which is a pretty crazy story. But I remember starting at Google and thinking, okay, like this is it. It's time to get serious about my career. And, that yoga teacher training was nice. And it is definitely, something that's going to benefit me personally for my own personal practice. But I had never taken yoga teacher training thinking I wanted to teach other people. That was not my goal at all. And then when I got the job at Google, I thought, well, now this is the thing to focus on, right? Like this is the kind of opportunity I've been waiting for and I just got it. I'm so excited. And the thing about Google is Google does actually a lot of work around wellness, around mindfulness, around introspection. And so they have this program. It's a 2-day program called Search Inside Yourself. Now, the person who started that program is actually no longer at Google. They have spun it out into its own independent organization. They go and like teach people. You can become a Search Inside Yourself facilitator. During that 2-day program, you learn different mindfulness techniques. And you also start thinking about your values and your actions and how things align in your life. And for me, one of the things I realized is I really believe in community service. But for the longest time, I had been so focused on setting up my own financial foundation that, yes, I donated here and there, but I really wasn't giving my time anywhere. And I thought, well, yoga is something I'm really passionate about. It's something that I love. What if I volunteer to teach yoga? I don't need the money, but that way I can be giving something and it's aligned with my skill set and something I'm passionate about. Turns out finding a place to teach volunteer yoga in New York City is really, really hard. That is not how the studio system is built. I can go into a whole other video on economics of a small business and yoga studios if you're interested. I'm not a yoga studio owner, but having worked at a few, I know a little bit of how the sausage gets made and how hard it can actually be. So long story short, I did a bunch of research for probably like a couple of weeks and I ended up finding a yoga studio in Brooklyn where I could volunteer teach. And so that's actually how I started teaching. It was specifically in a community that was focused on local Black residents, and I tended to get older students. So it was really interesting going from having this very, active vinyasa practice, and that was my training in yoga, teacher training, to then going and teaching this other community. And I will tell you, I was really terrible my first class. Like, I was not good at all, but I'm so grateful for Tamika Ford, who is or was the owner of Emerge Soul. It doesn't exist now post-COVID, but that's actually where I got my yoga teaching chops. And I started teaching there on a volunteer basis, and I really loved it. It was just me pouring into myself and pouring into others over time as I taught more classes. I got what I think is a little bit better. at it, and it was a really amazing experience. And then through that, I got introduced to a few more studios, ended up teaching more yoga classes and sound healing classes in Brooklyn. And so right before COVID, I was managing my full-time job and teaching yoga and sound healing on the side. I was teaching 3 classes a week. I was still single at the time and thinking, this is not sustainable, but I'm not ready to give anything up. Like I knew I was doing a lot because I was doing my full-time job. I was teaching classes, which, a 1 hour class is really like 3 to 4 hours when you're taking like the commute time, prepping for your class ahead of time. You're also sometimes, setting up the studio. You're also helping clean up and close up afterwards. So all in all, it was a lot. And I was being social on top of that. So I knew that at some point something's going to give, but I also enjoyed everything and I didn't want to give anything up. When COVID happened, I took a pause from my classes and then I got really into pranic healing. I got into orthotic yoga. And in 2024, I started Soltara with my husband. And now part of the reason I did this is that I learned, at least doing it part-time, scaling a services business is really hard. And, along the way, like I said, I taught at yoga studios. I also did private one-on-one sound healing trainings for clients that had like reached out to me completely cold inbound. I had done one-on-one private healings for people. I also had been hired by people to do workshops and specific events. So I had been hired to do something at Audible. I had done something with Indie Wild, which is here in New York City for their launch of their new serum. I had been hired by a few other people to come and either teach yoga or do sound baths. Then within Google, I have taught weekly classes. I have done workshops and one-off events. I have been called in by teams for their offsites to do some kind of wellness facilitation. And so I got a lot of experience doing services. And what I learned is just doing it a few times a week as I wasn't really building my brand or turning into meaningful revenue. And what I mean by that is one, the truth is that teaching yoga classes or sound healing classes, it can be a struggle financially. It is definitely not as lucrative as, working a few hours at Google. Like I definitely joke that to make $100 at Google versus to make $100 either with a service or products business is so much harder. Like that is just the reality of it. Now, obviously, there are the top 1% who are being really successful at this. There is that possibility and that opportunity, but the reality is that it's really hard to get there to the top 1%. And so I was doing it. It was a side hustle. I enjoyed it. But as I started thinking more about where I want to spend my time and how I want to do things, I was thinking, well, it's really hard for me to build my brand as it is right now. Just doing a services business, a product business can scale. So that was, of course, part of the impetus of why I started Soltara. Now, I am really passionate about the products we created. I mean, I spent months designing everything. For our Cosmic Starlight Guided Journal, I have come up with our company name, our logo, our colors, every single font that we use. I have designed every single page of that journal from scratch myself. For our aura sprays and bath salts, my husband and I spent weeks, if not months, coming up with those specific formulas, testing literally 5 more drops of this essential oil, 2 drops less. So all this to say, I really love my business, but part of the reason I created it was I thought it would be easier to scale a product business than a services business, right? Because a product business, anyone can buy from anywhere. Services, I do some virtual stuff, but I've noticed that people prefer in person. And so then I'm constrained by my location, the places that I can rent out for space, how much they cost, plus the transportation and logistics, especially if I'm bringing my instruments. For Soltara, we have set up an e-commerce website on Shopify. We have done pop-up events. We have gifted our product to influencers. We have done our own PR. We have spent a little bit of money on ads, and we have been part of multiple mentorship programs. So all this to say that I have spent a lot of time and effort on both of my businesses. I have been doing services since the fall of 2018. And then we have been doing this product business for the last year and a half. And so what I can do is I can share my experience with you, what the challenges are, what it actually takes, and why I keep going even now. So the first thing I want to say about any time you start a business, whether it's a side hustle or you're doing something full-fledged, I think this would hold true, which is your relationship will change with what you're offering. And what I mean by that is when I was just doing yoga or sound baths for myself, or let's say friends, I was controlling everything, right? I was doing it when I wanted to do it, how I want to do it, how long I want to do it. I was also not doing any of these other things that you have to inherently do when you start a business. When you start a business, you have to think about sales, marketing, strategy, finance, operations. So your relationship with the thing will fundamentally change. Now, this is not a good thing or a bad thing. It's just really the reality of it. And the truth is, if I had never started a side hustle, I would never have had to think about branding, sales, or marketing, things I am not particularly good at. And so it has been a steep learning curve, right? Now, there are people out there who are really amazing marketers. They probably have had to learn on the finance and operations piece. And that's somewhere where I am a little bit better. But regardless, there are new things that you're going to have to learn that you wouldn't have to if you're just doing it for friends, right? Teaching a free class or a donation based class just for fun versus actually something where you're trying to make money. Secondly, as I have been doing small businesses, I have bought different kinds of classes to help me grow because I don't know all the skills. And for me, it's easier to invest in a class where I can get a return and learn things quickly rather than try to have to figure out everything on my own. And I don't know how true this is for other businesses, and just maybe being in wellness is a little harder, but I found that a lot of the classes I paid for, I have not gotten a return. And that's really disappointing. It's disheartening. You think, oh, this is the thing that's going to change my business and make it go from, here to here. And that hasn't been the case for me. And now this is trial and error. I've also had the case where I have been recommended people to work with that have worked for other small business owners that I know, and it just hasn't worked out as well for me. I've also taken one class, which I think was like the best money I've ever spent. All this to say that there is going to be a lot of trial and error. And even when you try to leverage other people's skills and expertise, whether it's classes or coaches, you don't have a guaranteed outcome. You don't actually know what's exactly going to work for your business, what stage you're in, the category you're in. And so it is a little bit of trial and error. And that does take time and money and energy. Speaking of that, when you start a business, you have to invest in it. You can invest via your own time, your own money, or your energy. And you have to invest your energy, right? Regardless. And what I mean by that, like I said, I know a lot of Googlers who have side hustles. And when they do, sometimes everyone doesn't want to do it on their own, like I have and my husband have. Instead, they'll hire people. And you can, right? You can hire designers, you can hire virtual assistants, you can hire someone to manage your social media. And so there, you're basically exchanging time and money, right? So instead of doing it yourself and spending all that time, which is what we are doing, you're hiring someone. You're going to pay a bit of a premium, but it might help you get off the ground a little faster. And so these are decisions that you have to make in terms of what are all the things that are going on in your life? What is your schedule? What is your budget? And how much do you want to invest? Now, regardless of whether you are investing a lot of time or a lot of money, you are going to have to invest your energy into a small business. I think that we see a lot of things on social media. Oh, make money like this, do this. It's so easy. The reality is, most of them are not easy, and a lot of those people are not genuine. I can tell you because I know other friends who have small businesses. I've met so many people on this journey. It is not easy. There is a reason that so many small businesses do fail. It is not easy, and it's not easy to compete against big brands that have a lot of budget, that have brand awareness, that people know of, people are used to. It takes a lot, especially in this day and age. On the one hand, it's easier than ever to start a business. The cost has come down significantly, but the markets are more competitive. There's so much noise. It's so much harder to stand out and grab someone's attention in this day and age. And when you start selling, you don't control who your customer is. And that is a whole other experience in and of itself. And what I mean by that is people will come late. They might be on their phone when you're either teaching yoga or doing a meditation. They sometimes want to touch your stuff, which I don't really like when people either touch my yoga mat or my singing bowls, especially without asking, but people will do that. But now you have gone from this is mine to I am offering something to you. And so you have to learn how to deal with those situations and deal with those people, even if you don't like it or not. And a big part of being a business owner is being really hospitable, right? And so again, your relationship changes with everything because it's no longer just, oh, this is mine, don't touch it, don't do this is what I want you to do. You actually have to figure out how to interact with these people when they might not be acting in the way that you expect or want. And the sacrifices are real. Having small businesses means that I am spending time on weekends on my businesses because I want them to grow. And what I'm not doing is I'm not going out to as many restaurants as I want. I'm not seeing as many shows as I want. I'm maybe not seeing friends as much as I want. I'm not traveling as much for every short weekend or holiday. And so these are real sacrifices. So that is a whole lot of some of the challenges of having a small business. But why do I keep doing it? And what do I think you should ask yourself? So, first, I think you should ask yourself, what is your vision and your plan? And now this might change over time, but you at least have to start with where you are today. And what I mean by that is, do you just want to share it? Whatever your passion is with just friends and family, and that's good enough for now. Do you want to make a little bit of money for it from it? And this is like, side hustle slash like hobby category, which is kind of where I was when I was teaching a few weekly classes every week, where I'm making a little bit of money, but it's not a lot, and I'm doing it because it's fun and I enjoy it. Or do you want to scale something that is going to be a significant amount of income over time? Now, that is what I'm hoping happens with Zoltara. We are not there yet, but that is the vision and the plan. And that's what keeps us going when things are hard. And so I think you really have to think about what is your ultimate goal from your side hustle? And also, how much are you willing to invest to see that goal come to fruition, right? And knowing that there's no guarantee. And I've mentioned this before. I know many people at Google who have side hustles, and I think it's not because Google is not a great place to work, it generally is. But I think corporate America does have all of us feeling a little unfulfilled. And so many of us want some kind of creative outlet. And then we think, oh, I have this thing. I'm really good at it. I like it. Maybe I can make money from it. And so I see a lot of people having side hustles. And I do see every year a few people do quit to go full time. But I can tell you there's plenty more who are continuing to be at Google year after year, just like I am. And I think that shows that it's not as easy to quit, right? Because if it was, people would be doing it at a higher rate. Another thing to keep in mind is the volatility. Having a corporate job, I have a good amount of financial security. Now, of course, anything can happen at any given time, but things are especially hard for small businesses right now. There's a lot of volatility with tariffs, with inflation, with consumer demand. So these are all things that are going to impact you. And if you're doing it full time, it's even more acute. But even for your side hustle, all of these macroeconomic conditions are going to impact how your business is doing, right? They say that certain businesses were created at the right time and that timing was everything. And I think that's true as well. So you have to decide, especially when things are a little rough, are you going to write it out? Are you going to pause? Are you going to stop completely? Or are you going to keep going, right? And like, there's no right or wrong answer, but you really do have to tune in with yourself what you're willing to give into your side hustle. Again, time, money, energy, all of those things. And how long are you going to give it? How long of a runway before you expect some kind of return on investment or significant income? And I was watching another YouTube video the other day, and this person was saying that a big part of success is luck, right? And that doesn't feel good. We all want to think that we are in control of our destiny. But the reality is that not all great products make it, not all great services make it. And sometimes it is the right branding, the right timing, the right people saw it. And so there is the air of like what you can control and what you can't control, right? And what are you going to do with that information? And so, where I have come to this conclusion now, having had both of my businesses for a few years, I flex in and out, right? So that is one thing that I do because it's a side hustle and it's not my full-time job is I make sure I don't burn out by taking breaks, by pausing, by going a little slower. And I can control that because it's not my main source of income. I can choose when I want to teach classes, when I don't. I can choose when we want to do a big event for Solthar and when we don't, things like that. But all that being said, I know that no matter how much I put in, I'm not guaranteed success. But why do I keep going? I keep going and my husband keeps going because we're really passionate about the products that we have created, about the services that we have to offer. And we think that there is value in it and that we want to give it a little bit more time. But we are not under the illusion that we are guaranteed success, that everything is going to turn out great no matter what. But we're at a point where we have more to give. And so we're continuing on this journey. So that's it. This is my look behind having side hustles while having a full time corporate career. I apologize if it wasn't as rosy a picture as you wanted, but this is really the reality of it. And I think I have grown and I really love that I've done this. I think it's a worthwhile endeavor, regardless of what happens with either of my businesses. But the reality is that it does take time, effort, and energy. And I think it's worth asking yourself, do you want to put all that in or not? And if you do, then fantastic. Welcome to the Small Business Owners Club. And, I'll be right there rooting for you. And if you don't, I think that's a perfectly valid decision as well. So, this was a bit of my experience. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. If I missed anything, if you've got any questions, please put them down there and I will answer them. And if you're interested in learning more about my businesses, I'm going to have the links below. So please do check them out. I appreciate your support and your follow. Take a look at my offerings. And if anything seems interesting to you, send me a note, send me a question, send me a DM. I'm happy to answer and share. See you next time. Bye.